this on a laptop to make sure that the font sizes are actually reasonable today. Yeah, that's actually really tiny. Probably need to down my resolution on this. I think Sublime is fine. The tab names in Chrome kind of stink. Let's hit this. Yeah, and the audio is a little low, I think. That's because it's coming through the webcam. That's why. Okay. Let's try to fix that. Xbox default is my sound input set to the right thing. Set to the 2i2 is that is correct, but it is not picking up very much at all. How about, oh yeah, okay, all right. That seems better, I think. Yeah, cool. Oh, is this on too? Yeah, okay, there we go. I have the monitor running, and I probably shouldn't have the monitor running because it's just echoing into my head. Okay, cool. I'm gonna close this window out and just get started here. All right. Let's cancel this because that already works. We can get rid of this because we know that's working. Now for probably an hour or two. Cool. So something that I wanted to mention before we get started here is this Go project that introduces a format for a shoulders.md file that sort of sticks this little thing in a markdown file that says basically, hey, this project, as all open source projects do, relies on other projects that do things for us. So I'm considering adding that to the Gatsby MDX project because it really stands on the shoulders of both Gatsby and MDX and would not exist without either of them, right? So that seems like a good thing to do. We'll probably do that later. We can make this smaller, this bigger. Yeah, so one thing I did figure out yesterday is that basically all of the panes and stuff, oh, this is my new keyboard. It's rainbow all over the place. Came yesterday. Get rid of Spotify. We have, okay, so what state of the world are we in right now? For Gatsby MDX, for sort of querying MDX code, raw code, and then rendering it out to the browser, we have it working. It doesn't necessarily pick up your files right now because this content is hard-coded and the scope is hard-coded. So two things that we need to do, which I have in a PR comment that I was making. Let's get rid of these. The webpack config, dir name, that was from yesterday, that's from yesterday. That is also from yesterday, but we need it. These are from yesterday too. Get rid of the code sandbox. That's my neighbor. That's funny. Yeah, so basically where we ended up yesterday, let's do Gatsby MDX, is this pull request. This pull request successfully renders MDX when you query the GraphQL schema. Splits the file into a scope file and a body. The scope file is written out into the cache. We pull the cache in when you do a create page. So when you do this create page in Gatsby, you have to specify this component to specify what React component renders the page. And we implemented this function called component with MDX scope. And you basically pass the path that you would already pass to this component field to this function instead. You pass the scope that you pulled from the GraphQL query. And what we do is we write this scope. This scope file has already been written out when you query it in the GraphQL schema. So what we do is we take it, we create a new wrapper around this wrapper, and we forcibly import that scope into that wrapper. And then we hoist anything that we need to hoist out of this original component. Things like pageQuerys, things like the actual component itself as a default export. And yeah, that works, as you can see over here. So this is actually using this custom MDX renderer component. The MDX renderer component uses a sort of new function to actually execute on this. So this is the entire runtime that we need to ship. This is much smaller than I thought it was going to end up as yesterday. I thought we were going to end up with something that we would have to ship sort of Buble, or we would have to ship Babel or something like that, which would have really blown out the scope and inflated bundle sizes arbitrarily. But now that it's just this sort of, just this like 20-line file, it's actually really great because it's really lightweight. It's probably better than doing the file-based approach that we're doing currently in Gatsby MDX, which is basically when you create page, instead of doing all of this stuff, we pass you the absolute path to an MDX file, and then we have a bunch of Webpack loaders that handle pulling it in. And I think this approach is much, much nicer because it lets you do a lot more for a lot less. It sort of we get to treat it more as data than the actual, see if we can make this a little bigger, there we go. We get to treat the MDX files as data rather than as just random stuff, right? Or just JavaScript files. See, this is the thing we did yesterday. Get rid of all of this. Yeah, so here's the code body. I don't think the server is running right now. Yeah, there we go. There's the code scope file. If we look at this file, it's just a set of imports. So it's just importing React, it's importing MDX tag, and it's exporting both of them. So we need to write a Babel plugin today that will pull these imports out of an MDX file and then also export them like this as an object that we can then spread. So let's make sure the server is still working here. And you can see that the the kitchen sink example that we have running failed in CI, but works locally. So we need to figure that out at some point. This is still working, which is great. Let's just make sure, because I made a couple changes. off stream. I just want to make sure that I didn't accidentally break anything before we get started here. Yeah, that's the other thing. So the GraphQL query in the non-page component, which is the original wrapper, it doesn't get run because we're wrapping it in a new wrapper, which means that we need to write a different Babel plugin to hoist that export up to the new wrapper. I don't think that'll be a problem because the way that the GraphQL queries are written, there's a single import, which is the GraphQL import from Gatsby, and then that can just be completely pulled out and re-injected into the wrapper itself. Is there a way for you to go stereo? That would probably be because I am plugged into a single thing here. Let me check OBS. That is, okay, so that's that. So this is doing that audio, right? Yeah, okay. I wonder if I can just use this audio instead. Yeah, I mean, I still need to figure out a couple of things, like everybody always does. Is that better? Actually, I don't know if that, so this will still be, that's still that, so I need to change this to the webcam audio. This is Scarlett, and I have it plugged into one channel, so I need to figure out that at some point. Testing. Is it still this? Yes. It's not still that. So it's the webcam now. Is it better now? I know it wasn't better before when I asked. Cool. Yeah, okay. So now the audio is coming through the webcam. So if I get to echoey or to whatevering, just let me know. I really want to do this aggregate device at some point, but I haven't quite figured out how to set that up. Cool. So let me probably pull this down a little bit so that we can put them all on the same thing. Yeah. Hearing everything in stereo is awesome. Cool. So this is probably too small, so I think it's, what is this? Yeah, there we go. So first thing we're going to do here is so this works. We didn't break anything from before. I'll just go over basically the changes that I made from the stream yesterday. I hard-coded React and MDX tag in this file in the runtime and passed them through to the scope. I removed all of that hard coding, and now we're just passing in the full scope object so that when we have a new MDX file, all of the scope will get passed in and used. So I don't think we'll ever need to look at this file again because it works. And then this is the MDX runtime. So this is the page query that we actually need to hoist out. We're definitely going to need that soon, so I'm thinking that I will do that first. Let's get rid of this. Let's get rid of this, and let's get, let's see, scope. Extend node types. This is extend node types, so we can get rid of that too. So for anybody that wasn't on the stream yesterday, this is sort of the GraphQL schema extension file. And right now we're just sort of pretending that we successfully transpiled this into something that will work in a browser. So this is the code body, and down here we have the code scope. And the code scope is just like, hey, we pretended we already wrote this Babel plugin that pulls out the imports and that re-exports them as object. And that's all fine because I'm really confident that those can be written. I've written stuff kind of like that before. So we're just going to ignore that for now. And for now, we're going to work on the Babel plugin to hoist the page query up. So let's start with sort of a little bit of file reorg here. So this was something that we did yesterday because it was a little bit, it was acting a little funky. So this query can go here. Actually, yeah, let's get rid of that. That needs to be up there actually, because we're going to basically, it's really funny that this is all sort of like syntax highlighted as code, because this whole section right here is actually a string that we are generating into code that we then use later. You can see it's called new wrapper here. Yeah, so let's make this the first thing that we do. Let's console.log the I really want this file name, which is right now the hash of the path to the wrapper, dash the hash of the path to the scope file. And I really, like, we already have a hash for the scope file, and it would be really nice to have those sort of be related to each other. So when we have, where is it? Code scope abs path. What we really want is something like code scope abs path dot split, and this we're actually going to need to do somewhere else because we really just want the last one. So it's the scope path segments. We're going to take the scope path segments. We're going to access the last one. So scope path segments dot length -1, and then we're going to slice. What is it? 0, -3. So we're slicing off the .js at the end, and we will get the scope hash like that. So let's move this down to here. I accidentally opened a Jared file. Don't need that. And then we'll do the scope hash here. And let's check out the, let's pull out this because we don't need this to be on a totally different screen here. So when we do this, we should see the log for the code scope absolute path and its scope hash. That code looks like it'll work. Don't know. We'll see. Yeah, so okay, that worked. So you can see we have the absolute path here and the hash here. So the hash is really what we want. We want the scope hash to be the thing that we use when we generate the file name. So let's leave a little comment here. Yeah, so we get the pre-existing scope, pre-existing hash for the scope file to use in the new wrapper file name. And then we have, so we don't need to log this out anymore because that works. Where do we have this? This is in the right file down here, create file path. There we go, create file path. And then we're replacing, instead of creating a new hash based on the file name, we're just going to use the scope hash here. And what this will do is it'll make it so that the Like the hash of the wrapper itself doesn't really do anything for us. But the scope hash gives us a little bit more information about which scope files are associated with which wrappers. So there will be a case at some point where we have multiple wrappers associated with multiple scope files. So if we ever need to debug this, we'll be able to go into the, this is in the right directory, right? ls examples, kitchen sink, .cache. So we're putting stuff in .cache, we're putting stuff in the Gatsby MDX directory. Then we have this MDX wrappers dir, and you can see these files right here. Right now they're all the same because we hard-coded it, but eventually this will be original wrapper hash on the left and scope hash on the right, and the scope hash on the right can be found in the remote MDX dir. So it makes it a little bit nicer if those two match up, right? Just so that we can say like, oh, I'm looking at this wrapper, I'm trying to debug something, let me go and, oh, Les has 2 S's. And let me go look at what the actual result of that scope file was. So let's rerun this. We'll remove this cache so that those files are gone and we don't have to deal with any leftovers. So then we've got this file in the wrappers dir, which is the 3010b3 and ends with b2.js, and that is 3010b3 and ends with b2.js. So now we can associate one of the new wrappers that we wrote out with one of the scope files that we already wrote out, so that we know just from looking at the file system which one is being imported into which place. And that's really like a developer convenience kind of thing, but definitely something I wanted to do yesterday. So let's start talking about how to write this Babel plugin. So one of the things that now that we're sort of treating these as raw code pulled from the GraphQL schema, one thing that we do want to do is make sure that is that better? Okay. Well, one of the things that we want to make sure is that we can sort of just, sorry, I forgot where I was going with that. So we have these page queries here that are defined typically on the component themselves, because that's what you expect to be the top level, but we're artificially inserting a new top level. So let's do a new package. We're going to call this something like, actually, let's do this first. I'm assuming that this doesn't exist, but it's possible that there's something that's a Babel plugin, pluck exports, right? There's possible that there's something that already exists in the world that will pull out these exports for us. So just did a Google search. I didn't see anything interesting in the Google search, so I'm going to do an npm search now. Babel plugin export. Transform export extensions, syntax, plugin syntax, proposal, namespaces, transform export default. Transform export default might be interesting to look at just from a code perspective that we can use. Babel plugin add module exports. That probably does a very similar thing where it goes and finds all the exports and then puts them into a module.exports. So that could be code that we want to look at when we implement this. Transform export default name, plugin config export, name export functions when they don't have a name within a file name. Okay, yeah, none of these look really interesting. Import export require path redirect. Okay, that's got to be like an alias thing. plugin export top level automatically exports all top level names. That's not what we want. So basically, the reason that we have to pull this page query from the interior component into the above wrapper is because if we just re-export it, which is what we're sort of doing here, right? We're just this thing that we're injecting here is roughly what we had before was export page query, and we were importing page query from original wrapper as well. And that didn't work because Gatsby doesn't reach into things to find them. So we could write support for Gatsby to reach into things, but that seems like a rabbit hole. And instead of changing Gatsby, we can just like basically grab that code and move the code from one file to another. And we're sort of doing this through the Babel AST instead of doing it with a regex because it could be multi-line. And while we could probably, write something like this instead, right? We could probably, where's Sublime actually? I'll do this in Sublime. Yeah, so we could probably search for something that looks like this, right? Export const page query equals GraphQL, blah, blah. And then there's like a bunch of stuff in here. Multiple lines of it, right? And we can do this, we can sort of anchor on this, and we can anchor on, after that, finding this tag and then finding the next one. That will work for a bunch of use cases. We could probably just regex that out, but it won't work. Well, I mean, it could get hairy if we decide to start doing like nested things. I haven't seen an example of anybody doing that in Gatsby, but it really should just work because that's how these things work in the wild outside of Gatsby MDX. So we don't want to do something that causes us to have different behavior than people generally expect from this language syntax. Cool. So this one isn't actually an official plugin. Transform export default. It looks like hasn't really been touched in a while. It might have gotten moved. Babel plugin, transform export default. So let's go to the repo, and then it'll be in packages somewhere. It'll be. I wonder if it's not here anymore. Oh, right, because we renamed. So all these got renamed to Babel plugin proposal, like export from, export namespace. Okay. Okay. So these are syntax and things like that. So I don't think that they'll be super useful for us. Might be useful for project scaffolding, but. So this is what we're looking for actually. So we need to write a visitor for our Babel plugin that visits export name declaration. If the name of the declaration is pageQuery, right? If the identifier is pageQuery, then we want to pull out the whole thing, render it as a string, remove it from that file, and put it into some kind of state, right? We need to have that somewhere. I don't think we're going to get much more out of this plugin. There we go. Okay, so we got a little bit. We got assignment expression. Exports finder. What is exports finder? That could be useful. Exports finder path. Constructor exports. So what is this doing? This is doing get the root path, get the declarations, is expression statement. So this could be interesting, actually. Has module exports. I don't know why I'm scrolling back and forth. I can just widen the window. Benefits of a 4K monitor. So let's see. Find exports, not exports that anything skip. So this is checking for a property on the left side of an assignment maybe, and a property to the left, the object, that name, that node, property left, the property, that name, that node, object name is export. So this is if exports. This is if property name is default. So if we are exporting default, then has exports default is true. If it's not and it's ES module, yeah, we don't need that logic actually, because we're not looking for compiled stuff. We're literally only looking for this page query before we even compile it at all. So it'll be already ES6 syntax, and we can look for just the named export syntax. Although to be fully compatible with everything else, we should probably do the other ones too, but find exports and call expression. If object name is export, so if exports dot something and the property name is not ES module, then you're doing like not module.exports, but the common JS equivalent of exports dot something, and we're calling that a named export. Oh, and this has support for like AMD stuff too. That's interesting. What is this actually doing? This is so that's another thing I should have looked at. I should have looked at what the plugin actually does. Yep. So export default foo into module.exports, or exports.default equals foo. Yep. This plugin follows Babel 5 behavior and sets exports.default and module.exports exports default. Cool. So yeah, that code could be useful to look at later when we're doing our and then there's this one, there's this rewire exports, and rewire exports takes named export. So this is a named export example. Rewire. No, it dynamically rewrites the imports. Is that? Live read only be used on exported values. Yep. Knew that. Counter is live. Counter can't be changed. Oh, so this is something that injects something into the module itself so that you can actually change things inside of the module and rewire them. That's probably not something that we need. So let's start with this kind of stuff, right? Let's start with something simple. We need to, so we're going to create a new package for this, right? And how are they testing it? Fixtures, there's an index, a helper plugin test runner, options.json is the. So it'd be kind of cool to just like take this directory and more or less copy it into a new package and then start from there. So let's more or less do that right now and see how far we can get. Let's do packages. We're not going to do Gatsby MDX. We're going to do babel plugin pluck export. And let's do pluck export. Let's do pluck exports. Why not? Let's make it generic. We're only going to focus on named exports for now, so it doesn't really matter. But so yarn init, babel plugin pluck exports. Let's cancel out the semver for now. Babel plugin to find and remove exports. Find and remove exports from a file and return them. Repository URL is going to be the same thing as everything else. We should probably set that. I thought I had this. I probably had this set up on my other computer. New keyboard means that I have trouble typing. Cool, cool, not private. So now we have this thing. We're gonna, I think these are all compiled, right? So the way that this is set up is a source and a test. The source has an index.js. I think that they're using import export. So these probably get compiled to something. We're gonna do it a little bit simpler, and we're just gonna rewrite some of this stuff into. So instead of, let's do pvpaste, index.js. So yeah, so then we have our thing. We are going to pull that over here. As I close the window. Perfect. Okay, so that's fine. Index. One thing I need to rebind. So to close Emacs is like CXCC, and I need to fix that because I keep accidentally hitting that because I have giant fingers. Let's see. So const declare. Are we going to need declare actually? API to assert version 7. Yep. So this works with 7. Inherit syntax export default from. I don't think we need the inherits here. We do need this visitor. We are going to need to probably set up a little bit more now that we're not importing from the export default from. Plugin syntax export default from. Wait, why is it importing from itself? Babel? Oh, at Babel. That's why. Okay, so this name's the right thing. Yeah, this named the right thing. So it's importing from itself. Why is it importing from itself? Plugin syntax export default from. That's weird, right? Compiler export default to ES 2015. Don't need that. Okay, well we're gonna move forward with this. Export named declaration. There's replaced. So I'm not a super Babel plugin expert. The most that I know about this is that since we're not inheriting from that, we won't import that anymore. Import declare from helper plugin utils. Let's look at helper plugin utils because we've got what, declare a couple times here. See our website for more information. Yay! Yeah, okay. Everyone will use this module. So basically this is like a, this gives us the API object that we're using to check to make sure that we're compatible with version 7. We don't really care about anything less than 7 because Gatsby uses version 7 already. Yeah, so that's just that we can just deal with, that's fine. And then we return this visitor stuff, export named declaration path. Let's just log out that just for kicks. Let's so we want the Babel CLI basically, right? We want I just have at Babel CLI these days. Let's check to see if that's at babel CLI. I think everything got namespaced, so I would expect it to be this. Yeah. So we're going to add this as a dev dependency of our project. Yarn workspace. So we're using Yarn workspaces. So I'm going to workspace into Babel plugin plug. Exports, add dev at Babel CLI. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take the file that we have here, I'm going to pass it in as a plugin when we run this so that I can just test to see what it's doing. Should be able to do something like this now. Yarn Babel. Let's create a test file. Let's put something inside test file. Yeah, and also now that I'm thinking about it, I need to check to make sure that we can hook this in the right spot in MDX.js. So MDX comes with a couple of different things. So basically, they have this tokenized syntax locator thing, and we are looking to apply this in packages Gatsby MDX, and then we are looking for the place at which we would apply this, which is the Gatsby node, extend node type is GraphQL stuff, component with MDX scope. Use the same file, right? I can just get rid of these. Perfect. Yeah, so basically we're doing this wrapper. Okay, so I'm thinking about how this is actually going to go down. I think this is going to be, the original wrapper is going to be a JavaScript file. So I think running the Babel plugin on the original wrapper is going to be fine. For some reason I couldn't, when I went to create that test file, I created it as a .mdx file, right? And I think we can just do a JavaScript file there. So let's do something like and this is just like, we don't care what these things are. We just want to make sure that we are handling some semblance of reasonable syntax. This is the most useless wrapper ever. It just inserts a div. And then we will want something like there will be some import from Gatsby up here. We'll write some fake query MDX whatever. And this has like a name field or something. I don't know, our root query type of the name. Why not? It doesn't actually matter what the content of that GraphQL query is, because we're never going to deal with it in this test file. And then we can do yarn babel. Where are we? We are. Cool. So that mostly works. We can already see that we're sort of, we want the React preset, or some, we want the JSX compilation actually, but we're going to use the React preset here probably, because I think that's already installed in Gatsby. So I'm sort of like, I could do something. Babel React is, what is it called? It's called preset React. I mean, I know there's Babel preset React, but I thought there was a @Babel for this. Let's check the, yeah, last published 10 months ago. Yeah, this is definitely, let's take a look at the actual packages. Yeah, there we go. So it is @Babel preset React. Cool. Why is this slowing down? Appears to be trouble with your network connection. That's not possible. My screen resolution right now is probably ridiculously high. Display, right? That's in displays. So it's a 4K monitor, and I should really change it for. I wonder if we can do something like using a scaled resolution to make it performance cool. Let's see if that looks a little bit better. Oh, it's easy to see. Okay, cool. Well, I'm gonna go back to the other one then. Yeah, so it's a 4K monitor. I have no idea what the actual resolution is on it, but it's the default. So we've got Babel preset React, which means that we can now use it when we do our little test. and the Babel CLI. Let's go to GitHub. Oh, see our website. Okay, maybe the website will have better information than the Git repo. Presets. There we go. -- presets React. Not allowed to export objects, only functions. What are you talking about? Okay, let's take a look at the node modules and see what we actually have installed here. We have nothing installed because it looks like it all got hoisted. That's interesting. So let's do babel plugin plug exports. Babel preset React lib index where's the export? Needs to be in 7. Cool. So it is declare, so declare does what we want it to. Did we get the Babel preset React somehow? And we are, no, I don't want to. Yeah, okay, there it is. We're getting the wrong thing here. We're getting the 6.24 version. I wonder if I can just be more specific about which one I want. Yeah, so just be a little bit more specific about which one I want, and that'll be fine. I have to figure out why it's trying to find, or I need to find out why we have the 6.0 version installed, because we don't use it. But yeah, so this should work now, and yep, and there we go. That is our stuff. So now we can do plugins, and we'll specify our other thing as a plugin. I'm assuming that this is going to not work out of the box, just because, what did I call this? I call this index, right? Import declare. Yeah, okay, cool. So that works. That we just need to change a couple of things because this file is written for ES6 and it is not, right? So it's basically going to be these import statements, change to requires. Going to be require as well. Import types is T. So we're going to do this dot types. This is going to be dot declare. Cool. So that should allow us to be a little bit less. You say you posted a screenshot on Twitter's? Okay, so that's not too bad actually. That looks readable. Yeah, I know you're watching me like this, which is kind of funny, but cool. Unexpected token export. There we go. So yeah, so we're basically just I don't know what it's sort of expecting for the export here. There we go. Okay, so that works. Yeah, the compatibility between Babel for ES6 and ES, or CommonJS and etc. is sometimes a little bit of a guessing game if you don't know how everything works behind the scenes, but that's fine. Cool, so path program. Why is this doing the entire program? So we just basically, we logged out the entire tree for path. That's not really what I was expecting. If is export default specifier. I bet you there's a if. Oh, that's saying if it's not a default specifier. Okay, so that's good. If it is default, then it returns. See what specifiers is. Never makes it. That's fun. Why does it never make it? Because there's nothing in specifiers. That's interesting. So apparently this syntax export default from was important on some level. Let's see what scope is. Cool, so we've got bindings to pageQuery, GraphQL, React. That makes sense. This looks like it's the entire program, actually. So it's just the program node. That's the thing that starts everything. Node path file. Yep. Container file program module. Yeah, so I thought this visitor would do named declarations. Let me go check the. So James Kyle wrote a really nice thing that I assume is still relevant, even though it was looks like it was last modified in 2017. Don't care. This is the user handbook. I want the author handbook. Oh, I think I was actually in the author handbook. Yeah, of course. Traversal, visitors, blah, 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 visitors, yes. So with this code, the identifying method will be called 4 times with each identifier. Yep, that's what we expect. Yep. Member expressions, paths, object representation of link. Yeah, that's what I expected path to be. Path is the current node, I guess. I thought export named declaration would only give us the named exports, but apparently it's giving us everything. So let's go look at Babel types. No, not TypeScript. So this is a package that helps. So this is babelcore.types. It's the package that sort of helps you find all of this stuff. So if we were going to write new code in, and we wanted to do it in a type safe or a typed way, right? We would use these type functions to like declare an export declaration, for example. Export all, export default, export name declaration. So here's one for name declarations. It's not quite what we want. We want to figure out. So we really want to go back to this hen, but we really want the state as an enemy of AST transformation. Yeah, okay. Don't really need that. So we're basically writing this visitor. This visitor is not showing me exactly what I thought it would. And it's only showing me one, so it's just executing basically on the program itself. There we go, export names declaration. Excellent. Yeah, so the node is supposed to be an export name declaration. The node is variable declaration of const. That makes sense. Container, don't care. That's the full code, that makes sense. So yeah, let's just switch this to node, so we should be able to get the export declaration. Yeah, so I don't know what I was logging out before, but I must have been logging out just something that I thought was something else. Because now we have the export name declaration, the node is going to be a variable declaration. The fact that the specifiers are null is interesting because well, for one, I'm not sure what specifiers are supposed to actually be. I wonder if we can. So these are actually things that we're going to need to do. We're going to need to remove this node if it's the right name. We're going to need to not only remove it, but we're going to pull it out and then we're going to template it, probably. So one of the things that you could do is you can take one of these ASTs and basically write it out to a string, right? Which is what we want to do, because we're taking it out of where it is, we're turning it into a string. We're taking that string, we're putting it into the scope file that we write into the cache. It's the get method passing the string to the property. Path.get. Left operator, so export name declaration. Path.node.property. So export name declaration should have some kind of like identifier that we should be able to use to actually get the name of this variable declaration, right? So what I think we want to do is that was path.get, right? Yes, path.get. So path.get, let's do this. I'm going to assume that the other stuff is not really what we need, and then this is going to be path.get, what was the actual declaration? So now we're in a variable declaration, and we need to get the name of the variable declaration. So we don't actually care that this is a const or a bower or a let, but we do care about the name, which I don't see. Scope path, where's the node? I really just need like something where I can watch these commands and pipe them into JIQ or something, right? Parent node, context, ops, node path, context, scope ops container, node. There we go. There's node. So node should have. I wonder what declarations. What's that? Right, because this node has a source location, variable declaration, const declarations should be inside of it. I wonder if that will give us. Yep, variable declarator. So things get a little bit weird when you start working with these ASTs, and you sort of encounter these things that are like variable declarators, which are like, you don't think of them as variable declarators when you're actually writing this code, right? You think of them as just like, oh, I'm writing a const or I'm writing a let. This key, parent key, where's our node? We keep just sort of like scrolling past the node here. Parent, state, ops, parent path, node, there we go, node. And this is not named, right? So the node is a variable declarator, line of code, ID, init. That doesn't actually look like what we need. Let's see what it is though. Undefined. Okay. Because it is inside of what? It's an array. That's why. Dot map. Let's do. So we're just reaching into this, and then we're saying like, hey, we're giving us an array. Give us the node of the array. There we go, tag template expression. That's the name. We need that name. I don't know if this is supposed to be. That seems fragile from just like if I wrote this. Cannot read get of undefined. Okay, there was an array in the example that was up there, wasn't there? Body.0, yeah, okay. That's the other thing. Like, I feel like when you're working with the ASTs and stuff like that, you sort of get into these things where like arbitrary index access in a program that I was writing normally would not be something that I would do, but it seems to be like standard practice and stuff like this. Node path, parent path, blah 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 blah. Key name. I need the value of this, basically, is what I need. And since these specifiers are empty, I'm just going to delete this. And this replace with multiple is going to be like, let's just comment that out, just because we're not going to actually do anything here. We're going to remove that, right? So we're going to do this. Where is it? Babel template. Yes, cool. We're going to use that too. Path.remove. Okay, so basically we're going to be like, if name equals page query, path.remove, right? And like if this is not a page query, then we don't want to do anything to it. But if it is a page query, and we'll just sort of like const name equals not page query right now while we're testing this. See you, Adrian. Thanks for coming. Yeah, I actually kind of like streaming working. It sort of keeps me around longer. So I think I'm going to keep doing it for a couple hours, like maybe between like 1 and 3 each day or something like that, or like 2 and 4. I haven't quite figured out what hours I actually want to keep doing this on, but if people keep watching, I'll keep doing it. Yeah, okay, cool. Blah, 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 blah. This is a name. The value of the name. Type annotation references. So this is scope. We don't need scope. Parent key. Right? Like we need that. But that's in the container. So that's weird. This key, parent key. So are we still in declarations? Is that what happened? Did we? I wonder if what we're doing here is this get doesn't actually do what I think it does. Cannot read ID of undefined. Yeah, variable declarator, identifier. I think the identifier is what we'll need, right? Declaration 0. Maybe it's not name. Maybe I needed identifier. Maybe that's what I actually needed. Container node is undefined. That's interesting. So we need to map out. So we're just getting the first declaration. The first declaration gives us a variable declarator. We're sort of going in by name. We need to get down to identifier. So this works. This looks really like if I actually use this in this like module that I published, like it'll break really easily on somebody's random code. You're saying if you could stream, you would? Yeah. I don't know. I started doing it yesterday, and I kind of enjoyed it yesterday. So I think I'm gonna keep doing it. Well, as long as it works out for me. And I basically work from home now, right? So picked up a couple contracts, and one of them is largely open source code. So I can just keep doing this over the next, say, like month or so. As long as I keep enjoying it, and as long as people keep watching, right? Cool. So then we have path, and the other thing we need to do is I don't know if we can pass path directly into Babel template. That would be really cool. I wonder if they renamespaced this too. I bet you it's at Babel template now. Yeah, it is. It totally is. So I think generator is what we actually need. Because we're not going to actually have a template, right? We're just going to have this AST. Wait, actually. That's a complete guess. Okay, that didn't work. That would have been really interesting if that had worked. I wonder if actually, no, can't rename this name though. Yeah, I know. Most people probably don't want their code just like sitting on the internet. But I think like, especially for JavaScript and UI code specifically, you're already shipping that stuff to a browser, right? So you're not actually hiding anything. And like, there's no real like JavaScript obfuscation kind of stuff, right? Like we minify everything, but everybody that minifies everything and works on these tools already knows how all the minification works, so we can just reverse it. And I've met people that think that sort of like JavaScript minification will prevent people from figuring out how things work. And that's not actually true, right? Because if you write JavaScript, minified JavaScript is still just JavaScript, and you sort of like, companies. There's a lot of companies that definitely don't see it that way, but there's also a lot of companies that like, for many other reasons are sort of like behind the times, right? Or haven't quite figured out the internet. It's weird to say like it's 2018 now, and like there's still companies that haven't quite figured out that the internet is actually the internet, and like once you put something on the internet, it's there forever. Like you can't get it away, right? Oh man. But eventually people will come around, I guess. I don't know. Where are we here? We're doing declaration. Let's log this out. So actually, let's test to make sure this compiled thing actually removed pageQuery. Yeah, so pageQuery is gone. So we looked at the exports, the named exports from our test file, and we've got this named export called pageQuery, and in our compiled file, it's gone. Yay! So we found the right thing. And now basically what we're working on is getting the string of code, because we don't actually care about everything else so to speak. And like this plugin eventually should be probably generic. I should probably be able to pass in some config where we look for specific names and then you pull out all of those exports. But for now, I'm just sort of like winging it, trying to get it to work, you know? Path.code isn't a thing. Remove that. And I think I'm actually going to record this and stick it on YouTube and stuff after this. I clicked that setting in Twitch now, so it should be able to do that. Node path, node, export name declaration, cool, source. Come on, you can't just give me the source right there, that would be awesome. pageQuery. See, there's a code thing right there. Why isn't there a code thing on every other node ever? Probably because that would be expensive and not really useful for most people. Export name declaration, blah, 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 blah. Don't care, node. So, my big question right now is sort of like, if I just pass this AST into Babel generator, will it work? And I don't know. I mean, I've used Babel generator before, but I've always used it in like almost exactly this way, right? So there's this template package that you pull in, there's this generator package that you pull in, and then there's the types, which we're already pulling in from Babel core in this example. But you build this string, you set a couple of like identifier names, which in this case are import name and source. And then you pass in this object to this function that comes back from template, and it sort of templates all of this stuff in for you. So you can use this to sort of build up things like, I've used it before to build icon pipelines from Sketch into React components, right? So it's useful in various ways. But this generate takes an AST. I wonder if it takes a path. I don't know. And I'm guessing that if no placeholders in use, you want to parse a string into an AST, you can use the .ast version of the template. Okay. So I'm going to assume that this is going to work. If we install this package, at Babel generator. And I bet you there's a better way to do this. I bet you like I can destructure generator off Babel core or something like that, and I just don't know about that. Cool. That's all still working. And then just generate AST, right? Yeah, okay, cool. Let's try to make this only work on pageQuery for now. And let's do, I don't want to log path, I want to log out, I don't know if this is, I have no idea, path. Or path.getDeclaration or something, I don't know. Let's figure it out. Let's see if this works. Generate is not a function. Generate is totally a function, come on. That babel generator, generate. Oh, come on, generator is totally a function. What are you doing to me, man? Was this destructured and I didn't notice? No, it's just generate. All right, let's see. Let's see what you are, generate. Default and code generator. So I'm going to assume that we want default. And because I'm sort of, yeah, that's got to be it. So I'm assuming that, generally speaking, writing Babel plugins more or less assumes that you are generator export declaration. Cannot read property slice of undefined. I wonder if I need to wrap it in a program or something. You know, it'd be really funny if somebody had thought about this ahead of time. It was just like, yeah, somebody will want to two-string this, and it'll just work. No, that was too much to hope for. Oh my. That is a silly, silly, silly mistake to have made. So basically what I did is I tried to template out the thing that I had just removed. Yay. Okay, this is not working for some reason. Let's go back to this. Let's see. How do I get a string of code from, you know, I'm getting to the point where it probably makes sense to Google this. Babel plugin render AST. I don't see anything interesting here. Well, Arthur has something over here. No. Render to string. Babel plugin pre-AST compiling. JSX everywhere. AST for JavaScript developers. Babel plugin visitor. I wonder if we need to do the opposite, actually. Instead of finding this and removing it and rendering it out, I wonder if we can write this Babel plugin to do basically the opposite, right? Take it, remove everything else, and then leave the imports. And then we can just sort of write, we can sort of operate and run this Babel plugin, and then the return value is going to be all the scope that we need. Reverse the name, yep, okay, I get that. Wait, does types come in as a function there? Dang, that's... Yep, okay. Let's just our declare stuff. Polyfills, etc. Plugin detective. What does this do? Scans for require calls and import statements. Oh, you know what? You know what? That's actually really funny. I don't know why I'm trying to render this out at all. Where is this? Because the path has a location in the code. The path is right. And then let's go for node. Oh man, I did all the way to the top, didn't I? Okay. Let's do node with that. Okay, so we're going to look for node. And the node has a start and an end. So the node has a, let's see. So basically we're going to dot slice start end. And we need to stick the program in there, I believe. Where's the code? Where's the code? There's the code. So path.getHub or path.hub.file.code. This is probably a horrible way to do this, but it worked. So that's what we're doing. Yeah, this is not the greatest. Const query export equals. Yep, there we go. So then we have that. Okay, so that's cool. How do we get that value back out of this Babel plugin? Right, because usually Babel plugins are meant for they're more or less meant for, like, you run them on this thing and they return some code to you. Right, because all of these are transforms. And one thing that I can probably do, because I'm going to be running this in, Node, basically exclusively. I can actually make this class export something off the class and then create new instances of it and take that state and have that state be what I need. I may actually just do that. So let's write a different test, right? So let's do instead of test.js, let's do index dot, or let's do we need this to be stateful, right? So test state.js. Okay, so let's do this. Let's do equals require index, right? Or yeah, require dot. So that's our plugin. We need Babel core. So let's go look at the Babel core APIs. Right, so there's this transform that we need. That's really it, right? That's the transform. And then we can do Babel transform. Let's take fs in here too, and we'll just pull in the test file. Fconst test contents equals require, not require, fs.read file sync test.js, and then babel.transform take some plugins, list of plugins, list of presets. Cool, that's fine. So we're going to do test contents here, do plugins, plugin, which is our plugin, and then we're going to do presets, React, and I'll just because that'll error out if we don't. And okay, so that should mostly work. The thing that we're going to do here is create a class that is our plugin, and this is going to hold some state for us. And I write a lot of React, so I'm just going to call that state. And then let's see, plugin. So what we need is this to append things to the state. So let's test to see if this will work. We'll just do this kind of thing because we're a little bit lazy right now. Just trying to get things to work, trying to make sure that they are what we need them to be. And basically, we're going to run Babel core inside of this Gatsby MDX to run off this code. So we want to be able to do something like this, right? Blah, 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 plugin. Okay, cool. So now we have this thing. To be sort of a bit lazy with this, we're going to do this. And we're going to do this. Because basically we can't just return the imports as part of the Babel transform. We have to return the code file that no longer has the import, because otherwise we'll get warnings from Gatsby about still having that page query in there. So we're going to use the return value of this plugin to be the actual code that we get out, which is all fine, that's normal. And then we're going to use this state from this class to be our this.state.imports.push, right? Where did I I screw up? Test contents. Oh yeah, right, because module.exports isn't a thing anymore. And then here, instead of plugin, we're going to do new capital P plugin. Oh yeah, well, this is silly too because we need instance plugin const instance equals this thing, and then right, so that should run. Right, because we can't actually set properties like that. Okay, so these need to be in the constructor. That's just annoying, but fine. I heavily prefer class properties over constructors because class properties mean that, so constructors just sort of like grow in complexity over time, and class properties tend to not have that property, generally speaking. Of course it was loaded with Babel 2.6. Oh right, because I did Babel core, not at Babel core. Let's do this instead. Let's do and actually I probably want to turn this into something that I compile because I'm sort of missing some language features that I really kind of want here. But yeah, so this works. This is what we're going to use to actually implement the functionality that we need to implement. Where are we here? There we go. So what we're going to do is I'm going to clean that up a little bit, and then when I clean that up, I'm going to stick it in here and process original wrapper in the same way that I'm doing it in this file right here. So we've got our plugin. Our plugin does some stuff. It accumulates this list of imports, right? So we can use this. We can use this for, or this list of exports, sorry, and we can reuse basically the same code to get all the imports. So I might rename this plugin import export collector or something like that, and then just have them both here because it seems like this could be a single plugin. But basically, so we're gonna go in here when we have this absolute wrapper path. So up here, what we're gonna do is something like fs.read file. I keep using sync just because it's like easier right now, but I'll probably change these to be async. So OG wrapper equals that, right? So we have the actual file. Then we're going to do exactly what this does. And we are going to transform it. And we'll need our instance, right? So this right? So we have an instance, we have this wrapper file that we read in. We transform that wrapper file so that we get the result without the page query. And probably for right now, I'll leave that there and you'll just see sort of a warning. But at some point, we will have to figure out how to redo this so that you don't get that warning. Maybe we comment it out or something, I don't know. Maybe we have some special syntax. That would be kind of not great, but yeah, so we pull this out, we get the page query from the instance, and then here instead of query we're going to do instance dot state dot map exports, right? Right, imports. Why did I call that imports? These are exports. Yeah, okay. So obviously variable naming doesn't matter right now, but why did I call those imports? Yeah, so it's this dot state dot, I'm going to change that to exports, so I'll call it exports over here. Exports dot map, and then we'll have like an export, and we will just return that export, right? We'll just list these all out. And that'll result in a syntax error. Why will that result in it? Oh, we tried something about export string. There we go. So that'll result in these things all being re-exported. We still aren't sort of dealing with the fact that these could have scoped dependencies in them. For pageQuery, it really won't matter though, right? For pageQuery, we know the dependency is already GraphQL, right? You don't really have any other dependencies. You could theoretically be using fragments and things like that. So we will have to think about that at some point. But for right now, we can just hoist that page query up. So basically, it's a bit rough, but it'll work, and then we can improve it in the future, is how this is going to work. And now we have hoisting of the page query. So basically, all I need to do here is clean up this code, make sure that, so I'm going to write this as a class instead of as a raw plugin, so that you have to actually instantiate it. That will sort of prevent it from being used as a plugin. So I might try to look for a way that I can do that. But yeah, I might leave this as two files and then just handle it like that. But in any case, this will work. This will get our page query hoisted. And I'm going to end the stream with you just need a bit of coffee. Yes, I 100% just need a bit of coffee here, for sure. But I also have not eaten today. I sort of slept in and woke up about an hour before I started this stream, so I'm going to kill the stream there. I'll put this video up on YouTube. I will clean this up and add it to the PR if anybody is following along. The PR is the Gatsby MDX PR for the ability to render code from GraphQL queries. So basically, yeah, just this. Yeah, and if you enjoyed the stream, let me know on Twitter. I'll keep doing it. And thanks for watching. Have a good one.